video, we're going to break down affirmative cases. There are three main parts. First, advantages. Second, plan text. Third, solvency. Advantages are the reason the plan would be a good idea if it was implemented. They have four parts. First, uniqueness. Uniqueness states that the conditions for the advantage occurring have not yet taken place, or are not likely to, unless the affirmative proposal is enacted. Uniqueness is typically a description of the status quo, or a projection of conditions in the near future. Here's an example of a uniqueness argument. This piece of evidence makes a description of the status quo. It says that the current trajectory of global warming is bad because it threatens life on Earth. The second part is the link. The link states that the plan causes something as a result of its implementation. It ties or links the plan to some other outcome through cause and effect. Things that attempt to explain a causal relationship between two or more things are referred to as link arguments in debate. Here's an example. This card establishes the plan, in this case a carbon tax, does something. The something is reduce economy-wide emissions of greenhouse gases. The third part is the internal link. The internal link is a piece of the chain that connects the plan to the impact by introducing additional causal connections to the argument. Here's an example. This piece of evidence ties what the plan resulted in, less greenhouse gas emissions, to other things, in this case climate change mitigation and adaptation. The fourth and final part is the impact. The impact explains why the outcome caused by the plan is desirable. It explains the significance of the affirmative proposal, or why it matters. In this case, the plan is important because averting climate change is necessary to preserve life on Earth. You may have noticed that a card can serve more than one function. The uniqueness card also had an impact element to it because it described why climate change was bad. Reading cards that serve multiple functions is a way to make your arguments more efficient. The next part of the affirmative case is the plan. The plan states the proposal the affirmative team thinks should be enacted. It's a proposal that falls under the umbrella of the resolution. So with our example resolution, the affirmative must propose a way for the federal government to restrict private sector greenhouse gas emissions. One way of doing that is by implementing a carbon tax. So the plan would be for the United States federal government to establish a tax on private sector emissions. Here is an example. Quote, the United States federal government should establish a revenue-neutral upstream carbon tax on greenhouse gas emissions in the United States, starting at a price of $42 per ton of carbon dioxide equivalent, rising 2% per year in real terms. The plan is written with the goal that the action it proposes is both necessary and sufficient to resolve the harms identified by the advantages. We'll cover necessity and sufficiency more in depth in a later video. The last element of an affirmative case we will go over is solvency. Solvency is the part of the affirmative case that proves the aff solves the advantage. Some sort of evidence is provided that proves the aff is a sufficient action to avoid the harms or achieve the benefits outlined by the advantages. Here's an example. This card states that the US must achieve emission reductions to ensure other countries that emit large amounts of greenhouse gases also reduce their emissions. You may have noticed that solvency and links to advantages can be the same thing. As a matter of presentation, some people like to just read advantages, with the solvency embedded as a subcomponent of that advantage. Some other people like to highlight solvency separate from the advantages. Let's recap. There are three parts to an affirmative case. Advantages, the reason the plan is good, the plan, the proposed course of action, and solvency, the reasons why the plan resolves the advantages. In future videos, we will begin exploring what the negative case looks like. See you there.